Welcome back, everyone, to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we're doing a deep dive visual breakdown of a really brief but incredibly dense and powerful piece of the ancient Adi Parva, specifically section 26 of the Astika Parva. Honestly, when you look at the mechanics of the language used here, it is absolutely thrilling. We're going to examine a single continuous sequence of events, a literal world-ending storm, and see exactly how the author structured this narrative to drag us from quiet reverence straight into absolute chaos, and eventually to safety. The sky looked as if dancing in madness. Wow. Let's use this dramatic quote as our cold open today, because, well, it plunges us right into the sheer chaos of the storm we're about to analyze. This isn't just your standard weather report. This ancient text perfectly storyboards a cinematic, world-ending event. It's almost like a modern blockbuster, utilizing total sensory overload to just grip the audience. The descriptive language is so dynamic, it paints this vivid picture of nature completely losing its mind. But how exactly do we get to this point of absolute atmospheric madness?
Well, it starts right here in Section 1, Summoning the Storm God. To really set the stage for you, we have to understand that this massive, terrifying tempest doesn't just spring out of nowhere, right? Actually, it begins with a simple act of adoration. According to the narrator, Sauti, the scene opens with Kadru adoring Indra, the king of gods. Now, Kadru, who is the mother of the snakes, or Nagas, is in this posture of deep reverence. So we're building up to an apocalyptic storm, sure, but the spark that lights that fire, it's an expression of pure respect. It's a brilliant narrative contrast. The author totally lulls us into this state of quiet observance before just unleashing the elements.
Now, what's really interesting here is the highly specific, regal detail we get about Indra. Before he even does anything, the text defines him as the king of gods, specifically having the best of horses for his bearer. This establishes his absolute supreme authority. I mean, he isn't just any deity, he rides upon the greatest steeds, and it's this majestic figure responding to Kadru's adoration, who then takes action by covering the entire firmament with these massive, imposing blue clouds. He basically pulls a giant curtain across the sky.
And then, Indra issues his command to those masses of blue clouds. He tells them, "Pour ye your vivifying and blessed drops." This is such a fascinating choice of words by the author. We know a wildly violent storm is brewing, right? But Indra's command describes the water as vivifying, meaning life-giving, animating, and blessed. He isn't commanding a weapon of mass destruction here. He is literally commanding the delivery of life. The intent behind the storm is positive and divine, even if the physical manifestation of that command is going to be utterly terrifying to witness.
Which brings us to Section 2, Sky Dancing in Madness.
All right, we are now entering the chaotic climax of the scene. The author just hits us with this rapid-fire list of intense sensory details to convey the tempest's fury. We've got the sheer volume of falling torrents, the deep roar of the clouds, blinding flashes of lightning, and the absolute physical violence of the wind. And all of this culminates in what the text simply calls a general agitation. By layering these intense visual and auditory elements one after the other, the author creates a complete sensory overload, perfectly mimicking what it feels like to be caught in a catastrophic storm.
And the source text goes even further. It describes these clouds as luminous with lightning and incessantly roaring against each other in the welkin. Now, welkin, that's a beautifully archaic word for the sky or the heavens. The imagery here is just incredibly violent. These clouds aren't just calmly floating by, they are roaring against each other. It's like they're engaged in a brutal, celestial battle up in the firmament, clashing together with immense force to produce these vast, overwhelming quantities of water. The scale of this downpour actually reaches an apocalyptic level. The text literally states, "The sky looked as if the end of Yuga had come." For context, that signifies cosmic dissolution. The sheer, incessant begetting of water and the myriads of crashing waves make it feel like the absolute end of an era. It is the ultimate expression of nature's terrifying, boundless power. And this brilliantly illustrates how that sensory overload is immediately followed by total sensory deprivation. The sky becomes completely overcast, and all natural light is just stripped away. The ultimate result? The rays of the sun and the moon totally disappear in consequence of that incessant downpour. The continuous sheets of water have completely blacked out the sky. The world is plunged into darkness, entirely engulfed by the roaring, flashing chaos of Indra Satorum.
And finally, Section 3, Deliverance of the Nagas.
Now transitioning down to the ground. Notice how the tone of the text immediately softens. We just experienced all this apocalyptic phrasing, right? The end of Yuga and the sky dancing in madness. But look at the resulting salvation. The water is suddenly described as vivifying drops and cool, clear water. The author masterfully uses this terrifying, destructive method, a total blackout storm, to achieve a profoundly peaceful, life-giving end. The violence up in the sky was literally just the vehicle for deliverance down on the earth.
Let's see how this builds into an incredibly tight chain of deliverance. If we map out the exact sequence of cause and effect, it looks like a giant puzzle perfectly clicking into place. It starts in minute 1 with Kadru's adoration, which sparks minute 2, Indra's command. That triggers minute 3, the incessant, world-ending downpour, which finally leads to minute 4, the Nagas' delight. It proves just how meticulously structured this single section of text is. Every single action is perfectly linked to the next, driving us from prayer to peril, and finally, to peace. And the serene aftermath is truly beautiful to visualize. The text notes that the earth is filled with water all around, but it's no longer a violent torrent. Now it's cool, clear water that reaches all the way down into the nether regions. Countless waves spread across the earth, washing over everything. And the ultimate result? The Nagas, the snakes, become exceedingly delighted. That terrifying deluge from above is completely transformed into their refreshing salvation below.
Which brings us to the conclusion of the 26th section of the Astaka Parva. The final destination is finally revealed, and the snakes with their mother reached in safety the island called Ramaniyaka. I really want to emphasize that word right in the middle, safety. Amidst all the clashing clouds, the vanishing sun and moon, and the crazy end-of-days flooding, the ultimate goal was achieved. A mother and her children were delivered to their island sanctuary completely safe and unharmed.
So, the crucial point is this: how does a terrifying, world-ending storm ultimately become a beautiful story of maternal safety and deliverance? Well, it happens because ancient storytelling intentionally uses awe and apocalyptic sensory overload to make salvation feel profoundly divine. It's a masterclass in narrative contrast that easily rivals modern cinematic techniques, leaving us eager to analyze more texts exactly like this. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.